And so we are covering two Upanishads today, the Brihadaranyaka, and oh my goodness, and how do we pronounce the other one? Christian?
Chandogya, I think.
Yeah,
Chandogya.
yeah, Chandogya, yeah,
Hmm.
Chandogya Upanishad. All right, so I'll begin with sort of a summary of the first one,
Yeah, and I
and
think we covered
we
a
both
little bit of it
we
in the
did. Do
last
we
one. Yeah.
actually? We did. Um,
I think we covered
we
like
did
the
cover.
first that first chapter, which is actually chapter two.
Okay.
Um,
So did we oh so both the story of the husband and the wife, right?
yes, yes, and
Yeah.
then like the pattern of like
She,
the self lives in everything. Yeah, yeah,
right.
yeah. Hmm.
Yes. Right. The Atman is in everything.
Yeah.
And when the Atman's understood, the subject object distinction
Yes, yes.
dissolves. Good point. So thank
Hmm.
you. Yes, there was that review. So chapter three, King Yanaka. In
Yep.
this one, he's hosting a contest in his court, where he has rival wisdom teachers attempt to explain Brahman, and he promises a grand prize of 1,000 cows, and I believe there was also gold on the cows, right? I think there were like
Oh
gold
yeah,
earrings or something.
10 gold coins on each of their
Yeah,
horns.
coins. There you go. And the grand prize goes to the philosopher who is victorious in explaining Brahman. And then the sort of humorous part is, oh man, I have a really bad spelling of it there, but Jan
Yajnavalkya, I think.
Yajnavalkya, yeah,
Yeah.
Yajnavalkya outrages the other contestants because he's overly confident in his own knowledge, um, and he orders that the royal cows just be brought to him even before the debate starts. So
He's
that's
like, I'm the smart, I'm
bold.
the wisest.
Right.
Just bring him to
Exactly.
me.
Exactly. Just bring him to me. I mean, a humorous,
Yeah.
piece.
Hmm.
But it turns out that he actually is the greatest teacher among them, at least within the story.
Hmm.
Um, Now, what I realized, Christian, is that there are a series of dialogues that are skipped in our version. So he
Of
actually
the.
goes through,
Oh, okay.
yeah, he actually goes through a number of debaters.
Oh.
And the one we get is the debate with Gargi.
Yeah, okay. I
Um,
do see in the book that there's
there's
like
this
a number eight
line
in the
numbers.
third.
Yeah. Yeah.
I don't.
It goes through all these other debates and basically he sort of beats them one by one, displaying his superior knowledge of the cosmos, death, Brahman, and the Atman. But when we
Hmm.
get to Gargi, we've got the lead question, which is what lies beyond the visible world. And I believe this is on our pages 104 to 107,
Hmm.
right? Um,
Wait, you said 107?
104 to
Oh, oh, yeah, yeah,
107,
yeah.
yeah.
104 to 1. Yeah, yeah.
Um, and it's yeah. So what's beyond this visible world? Um,
Right. There's like interesting language here that I don't think I've really heard some of these words in this
sure.
context. Like, Gargi asks, like, in what is space itself woven, warp, and woof? Tell me,
Yes.
Yajnavalkya. I don't exactly
Yes.
know what woof means.
Warp and Wolf, at least as it's sometimes an expression,
Like as
and,
a
and it
phrase.
basically, yeah, it's an expression. Yeah, those two words are coupled together as an expression that means sort of uh, blended through the whole.
Mm,
And I
okay.
actually think it has something to do with like a warp and a wolf has something to do with like weaving mats or something, weaving like carpets
Okay.
or rugs, right? So
Gotcha.
it's there's a warp, and I would think
It's like an
one
over and
part
an
is the
under
warp. Yes,
with like,
exactly.
okay, yeah, yeah.
So
Pearls and
throughout,
yeah, yeah. Hmm.
throughout, um, and then we get that it's ultimately the imperishable, right?
Hmm.
Or akshara, the imperishable, that is throughout. Is this the one where we've got the oh yeah, yeah, yeah. This is the
Oh,
one.
this
Is
is
this what? Actually, no. It's a little bit of the knots, right?
yeah, netty netty. Yeah, it's
Right?
like
Yeah.
neither
Right.
big nor
So in other
small.
words, it's sort of the whole like via negativa in the Western tradition, which is trying to explain God, but with what God is not.
Hmm.
So in this case, the imperishable. So you've got like, you know, neither big nor small, neither long nor short, neither this, right?
Yep, hot nor cold, bright or dark.
Yeah. Um, and and yeah, so we get sort of this particular response. Although it looks like Garg. Oh yeah, well yeah, looks like it seems like Gargi is a little bit more of a inquirer as opposed to a debater. But
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, no, that's a beautiful sort of, especially 106 is a beautiful section on the imperishable. You know, consumes nothing, nothing consumes it. Um, Once again, we have sort of like this whole like if you don't know it, there will be problems, life problems, right? Without knowing the
Mm-hmm.
imperishable. Um, Whoever performs rites and ceremonies undergoes austerities, even for many years, reaps little benefits. The imperishable is the seer, though unseen, the hearer, though unheard. So we get sort of that. I guess he moves from air to the Brahman, right? Because it's sort of uh, so-
Or space, you mean? Like air
or
as in
space.
space?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. The translation. Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. I see. Ask. The question is asked. Yeah, space. You're right. You're right. You're right. In space. Yeah. So we get to the imperishable, which I imagine is just another is not is other language for Brahman, or the ultimate ground of
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
being itself.
Yeah, and they use capitalize. They do capitalize imperishable.
Yeah. Hmm. Hmm. Um, no one can defeat him in the debate about Brahman, is how
Yeah.
that chapter ultimately closes. So enjoy the cows. And then in four, I like this one um, a lot
Mm.
because we get the different states of consciousness. Oh, and
Yeah.
by the way, I found this was the section that had the whole uh, uh, every life is defined by your deepest desire. Remember we talked about that last
Mm.
session?
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Remember?
Yeah.
And I was sort of like, what is my deepest desire? What am I working on in this life?
Right. Right. Right.
That's in this section, so I didn't realize it, and it's also in the
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Chandogya, um, which we can get to later. Um, so I'm sorry. In chapter four, you've got uh,
This one is like a bunch of
Yajnavalkya and King
mhm,
Yanaka, right? Or
back
yeah,
and forth between the king and Yajnavalkya.
right.
Like after he's gotten the cows, I guess. He's just
Yeah,
got some
back
questions, the
into the
king.
flow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's interesting. It's sort of a private discussion, right? It's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
seemingly it's not in front of the other debaters. And he's explaining sort of the absolute identity of once again a massive theme that we've been hearing on repeat, the identity between Atman and Brahman.
I actually love this one. I'm remembering it.
I do too. The three states of consciousness I thought were really interesting.
What I
Yeah,
like
that
about
in
this one
particular.
is it's
Yeah.
kind of like the Socratic method in that the
Hmm.
king asks, "What is the light of man?" Right? And then Yajnavalkya answers like, "The sun is our light, for by that light we
Yeah.
sit, work, go out, and come back." And it's like such a
Yeah.
simple answer to the question.
Yeah.
Like it doesn't go as deep as you could, but then the king
Yeah.
is persistent and says, "When the sun sets, like when you don't have the sun, what is the light of man?" And
Right.
then, and then Yajnavalkya
The
answers again, like in one sentence,
moon.
the moon is our light.
Yeah.
For by
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
sit, work, and go and come about. And then it keeps on going. It's like when the sun
Yeah.
sets and the moon sets, what's the light of man? And it just keeps going
Yeah.
until you get to like, okay, well, when there's no light, you have like fire is the light of man,
Right.
and then you
Right.
have
Then we get speech.
speech for the like, because that's how you communicate with each other when there's no light.
Yeah.
Um, and then when there's no one speaks, and then finally you get to the self is indeed the
The
light of
self.
man.
Yeah. No, no,
Um,
I like that. Structurally, the
hmm
framing of that is
And then you get the question,
very Socratic.
who
Yes,
is the
exactly. The big
self?
one. Yeah. Who is the self at the end? And that's where we get into the various states of consciousness.
Yeah, that's where you get
Um,
now you have the sage actually like speaking
right.
a lot
Right.
to the
Exactly.
answer.
Right. Right. You've got sort of this element of almost sort of the persistent child's question.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but okay, but now we get to the big one.
Mm-hmm.
So who is that self,
Oh,
right?
interesting. This is just a connection
Yeah.
between this one and the Chandogya, where I was like, okay, if you were satisfied with any of those answers, like those
Hmm.
first few answers, what is the light of man, and you just went away, then you
Yeah.
wouldn't be getting the deepest knowledge, right? But like in the
True.
Chandogya, you see it's similar, except there's two
Is that
pupils.
with the
One
yes,
of
it's
one
with
of them,
Indra
hmm
and then the demon or the godless in our text,
yeah, yeah, where one of
right?
them has the teachings and it's like, oh, the body is the self,
Right. Right.
and goes out and it's like, I'll adorn the
Yes.
body, and the other one is like,
This
wait, this doesn't
that
make
was
sense.
great.
If the self is perishable and it can be
Yes.
lame, then, or if the body is perishable and can be lame and paralyzed, then does that
Yeah.
mean that the self can
The
as well and
Atman,
die?
right?
And so
Exactly.
it's like that
Exactly.
extra question brings you back to
Yeah.
the sage, and that
Yeah.
I don't know. I just made that connection just now between
No,
this chapter.
I think I think it's a good it's a great connection because it talks about sort of the spiritual seeker, right? The
Yeah.
eagerness of the spiritual seeker to want to like I'm not satisfied. I
hmm
got what you said, but I'm not satisfied with this piece yet because there's another question,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Whereas the godless, or in other texts, the demon, um, he's like, oh yeah, full identification between body and Atman. Great. Now I'm going to say that pleasure is important and all these other sort of sensual pleasures, as opposed to Indra, the god, um is like, yeah, no, I'm not quite satisfied. But by the way, his last question I don't know is fully answered after
hmm
his 100 and some years with the guy. I noticed there was a shift. Like every other question that he asked was well, train with me for 32 years and then you'll know.
Yeah.
And then he responds to the specific query.
hmm
But the very last one, the response that the teacher gives, I noticed was a bit of a disjunct. It's not, I mean, we could look at it,
Yeah.
but it didn't seem like fully answering in the same wording
hmm
as the prior questions and answers. But
Sure.
let's stick with states of consciousness. So we've got three states of consciousness. Maybe we could start with his answer to what is the self, just that first paragraph of 109. The self, pure awareness, shines as the light within the heart, surrounded by the senses, only seeming to think, seeming to move. The
Mm.
self neither sleeps nor wakes nor dreams. And then he gets in line 9 about these levels of consciousness. The human being has two states of consciousness, one in this world, the other in the next. But there is a third state between them, not unlike the world of dreams, in which we are aware of both worlds with their sorrows and joys. When a person dies, it is only the physical body that dies. That person lives on in a non physical body which carries the impressions of his past life. It is these impressions that determine his next life. In this intermediate state, he makes and dissolves impressions by the light of the self. So, real quickly, well, real quickly, the two states of consciousness then would be my state of consciousness right now, in the here and now, right, in this
hmm
world,
And in the
and
hereafter.
then and then the hereafter. What exactly is the third?
Between the two? Where, oh yeah, where you're
Yeah.
aware of both worlds? I don't know, that's weird.
Yeah, a third state
But
between them, not unlike the world of dreams, in which, oh, you're aware of both.
mm-hmm.
Okay, so it's a state of consciousness, it's a state of awareness. I'm aware of this world,
And the next.
yeah, or let's put it this way: state of consciousness one, awareness of this world; state of
Mm-hmm.
consciousness two, awareness of the next world, and then it's holding them both together
Mm-hmm.
is the third.
Yeah.
Does that seem right?
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know
Um,
exactly what this mean. Like, if is this more metaphorical or is like how
I don't
literal
know. It almost seemed
is
didactic.
this?
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Right? Like,
I was taking it as more didactic as that this was teaching. You know.
because I don't know, I almost it reminds me of like the Stoic idea of
Hmm.
well like one, I mean, I think awareness in this world is kind of obvious, right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
the Stoic idea would be like contemplation of death, and so that kind
Hmm.
of makes me think of the next world. But obviously, in the context of Hinduism, the next world has different meaning. It's
Yeah.
not just like death. And then the being in the state between them, I kind of think of in Stoicism like the like contemplation of the divine or like the zoom out of like you are just like this one little piece
Yeah.
of the universe of the world.
Yeah.
And so it's like being able to have that higher awareness of like, oh, like yes, I'm here and I have feelings and sensations
Yeah.
and things I care about, but also like I'm just one piece of the puzzle. And it's like, you know, when I die, like the world's going to continue and like I don't know.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering how literal it is. Like, oh, I am able to like perceive this world. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, I'm actually able to perceive the next world. I don't know how one achieves that. And then like
Yeah.
the in
Yeah.
between, I that sounds very meditative. Like, but I don't know
Yeah.
what
Because
I don't know what the second.
you
How
hold,
do you achieve
you're
the
sort
second
of
state of
holding. You're
consciousness?
yeah. Well, I imagine the second state of. I mean, we probably would have to go back to, and there is more here below, right?
Hmm.
But we probably have to go back to um, all of the. We can call them we can call them like the morals or austerities, right?
Hmm.
The ones that we've referenced before that all of the yogas require, right? So the moral practice,
Right.
but then also and I'll put sort of loosely the meditative practice because all of the different four yogas, as we've talked about, have, I would say, something that is meditative, even if it isn't meditation.
Yeah.
Do you
Hmm.
understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Studying scripture for the jnana, love of God for the bhakti, work for the karma, and then clearly meditation. So it's
Hmm.
all sort of meditative. And I would imagine if it's almost like the morality, well, actually, well, I was going to add another too, but the morality plus the meditation, loosely construed, is a way to elevate your consciousness to see the next life or to
Hmm.
see, right? Did they say next life? Was that one of, yeah, the next,
The next world. Yeah.
the next world, yeah.
Hmm.
Are you with me? I would imagine that those would be ways to, right, because you're like, how can I see this next world? Like
Yeah.
I
I don't know.
can't in day to day,
I guess I'm kind of
and then
wondering.
and
Like,
actually, what's
go for it.
interesting? Yeah, go. Yeah, no, no, no.
Okay, I was like, I'm kind of wondering, like, okay, I'm in this body experiencing this world. Is there another me in the next world
Sure,
experiencing? And
sure.
then this third state is like us being able to experience together, right? Like,
Yeah,
it's not that, like, oh, I can shift from this state of consciousness to the second. It's more like
yeah, yeah,
there's me, there's this the next, and then there's this third where we're able to kind of like think together. When we're
yeah.
in this meditative
Oh,
state, we're able to like think
well,
together.
sure.
But I don't know.
But when you say like the net, like another me, and you might mean that loosely,
Yeah.
my brain thinks that betrays the Hindu metaphysic that there
I mean,
is
it's
only Brahman. So in other
yeah, yeah,
words,
yeah.
like you with me. So in other words, like um, you know,
I mean, like it is me, but I don't know. I guess
Yeah,
the way that I
yeah,
think
yeah.
about if we're talking about um, reincarnation, then it's like
Hmm.
my body dies, and then
Yes, yes,
myself
yes.
continues into the next world, right?
Yeah.
In a new body, presumably.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
so what I'm
Yeah.
thinking of is if that is the next, and this is the now,
Oh, you know
right?
what's, yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
That's what I'm trying to understand. But yeah.
Yeah, actually, and then I just had a thought too, like what,
Hmm.
like is are you seeing next world as being next incarnation?
That's what I'm trying to
Yeah,
understand.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I'm wondering
Hmm.
because we haven't really gotten the sense of um like heaven, sort of like life
Oh, like
stops
or like an in
after life.
between, maybe.
Yeah, or even well, or even the Christian notion, sort of like it's linear, you die, and then it's afterlife,
Right, right, right.
each for eternity. We haven't really got like I haven't gotten a good
Mm-hmm.
image of what that is within Hindu theology, right?
Oh, that's a good point
Um,
too, because like at the end, right? Is it moksha?
yeah,
Right at the
yeah,
end of reincarnation, like you
yeah.
don't reincarnate into another body, right? So like maybe that is the next world that is being talked
I
about.
was yeah, yeah. Actually, it even does say back on 109 as I was looking,
Hmm.
it says that when a person dies, it is only the physical body that dies. That person lives on in a non-physical body.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like there's an intermediate which carries the impressions of his past life. So it's
Right.
almost like it's almost I guess another way of saying it is after you die will work with soul, maybe.
Hmm.
Your soul lives on in this intermediate period with all of the, and they use the word
Yeah.
impressions of your past life. It's these impressions that determine the next life,
Right. So that's
right?
where the word next is used again, and so that's where I'm thinking, oh, is it the next reincarnate? Is the next
Yeah,
world the next reincarnation?
yes, exactly. As opposed to the afterlife
Right, like the end
in
of moksha or
Judeo-Christian.
whatever. Yeah, yeah, or
Yeah,
heaven or
exactly.
something. Yeah.
In one of those notions. So, um, I mean, I think it's in the book I just gave you, the
Hmm.
autobiography of a yogi. But and we've referenced this before. There we go. There we go. We've referenced this before that apparently, yogis in a heightened state of consciousness are able to actually see all their past lives, or
Hmm.
some of them. So that gives you backwards.
Right.
Don't know what that means forwards,
Yeah.
like how what like I mean you might be able to predict, because of my deep desires that I have in this life, I probably can maybe get a glimpse of how it's going to play out in the next life, you
Hmm.
know. Um, and then, but the third state is holding both of those together. So yeah, it would be next life. It would.
Yeah, yeah.
So, in other words, that third state of consciousness would be past lives, or what I'm sorry, present and next. Next lives, as opposed to vaguely construed afterlife.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know, you know. So I guess like compared to like a Christian notion, if you were like a Christian yogi, then you'd be able to understand everything that's happened in your one life because it's
Hmm.
only one. But you're able to also see like eternity.
Right, right.
You know what I'm saying? You're able to get a glimpse of um yeah, God in heaven and possibly and hopefully you dwelling with it,
Hmm.
you know. But in this one, you don't have that. But when he talks about the third state, it's interesting because he says, 110, in the third state of consciousness, there are no chariots, no horses drawing them, or roads on which to travel. And here's what's interesting: but he makes up his own chariots,
Hmm.
horses in roads. In that state, there are no joys or pleasures, but he makes up his own joys and pleasures. No lotus ponds, no lakes, no rivers. You get actually that last sentence seems important. Is he who makes up all these from the impressions of his past or waking life. Wow.
Interesting. Yeah. I mean, if it describes that third state of consciousness like a dream, kind of,
Hmm.
then it makes it
Hmm.
easy to
Hmm.
kind of understand how when you're dreaming, you are kind of fabricating this world from your past
Yeah.
experience.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have control over it, sometimes you're just
Yeah.
experiencing.
Sure.
But it makes me think of that, how it's like, okay,
Well, actually, he segues into it.
yeah, go for
It
it.
is said that these states of conscious, I'm sorry, it is said of these three states of consciousness that in the dreaming state, when one is sleeping, the shining self who never dreams, who is ever awake, watches by his own light the dreams woven out of past deeds and present desires, which, by the way, is so true even of just the here and now.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, who knows about the past life, right? I mean, if you think about your dreams, it is, right?
Yeah, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Deeds you've done, desires you have, right? In the dreaming state, when one is sleeping, the shining self keeps the body alive with the vital force of prana. Are we good on prana? Prana is
Uh,
basically breath,
oh,
like
okay.
like a
Like a life
it's
force
it's like
kind of
it's a
breath?
life force, but it is breath.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
So there's actually, I think there's a particular yoga called prana. I think it's pranayama, where you are actually doing breathing exercises as a meditative practice.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Some of them are really funny too, as I recall, where
There's
you just
the
take
nostril breathing.
nostril ones or the real quick, like
Mm-hmm.
those kind of things. So self keeps the body alive with the vital force of prana and wanders wherever he wills. In the dreaming state, when one is sleeping, the shining self assumes many forms, eats with friends, indulges in sex, sees fearsome spectacles. But he is not affected by anything because he is detached and free. After wandering here and there in the state of dreaming, enjoying pleasures and seeing good and evil, he returns to the state from which he began. Um, so put that all together, right? I
Yeah.
feel like this came up in the other Upanishad as well, but looking at 111, he says, as an eagle, weary after soaring in the sky, folds its wings and flies down to rest in its nest, so does the shining self enter the state of dreamless sleep, where one is freed from all
Mm-hmm.
desires. um,
Dreamless sleep is mentioned, yeah.
so that, um,
I wonder what the translation of that, like the original word for dreamless sleep, like is that like a
yeah,
concept and we're just getting the
yeah,
translation?
sure. No, exactly, exactly. Um, As a man in the arms of his beloved is not aware of what is without and what is within, so a person in union with the self is not aware of what is without and what is within. For in that unitive state, all desires find their perfect fulfillment. So, so yeah, I mean the how do we put all this together? Um, I'm able to, I'm able to see. I mean, especially with the dream metaphor,
Mm-hmm.
or reality. I mean, what I appreciate about this is that um, we're getting a religion that's actually giving us a theory of dreaming, like why we have them.
Mm-hmm.
To go back to maybe our first discussion about how comprehensive a theory is.
Mm-hmm.
Is it how much of it is covering? How much of reality does it cover? And in that, there's something appealing about it, right?
Right, right.
So, and dreams, obviously, even if we take like a sort of a secular, non-religious Freudian or Jungian perspective, it deals with, I mean, at some level, it deals with the ego, it deals with self desire, it set fears,
Mm-hmm.
so we totally can see that at play. Um, um, so, so yeah, it'd be interesting to like actually, I mean, one, I find the waking consciousness just to be absolutely amazing, period.
Sure.
That I am an aware being taking in a three-dimensional world, etc. Or four-dimensional, is that right? Or more.
Depends. Yeah.
So, and then I have never had consciousness of the next world that I know of.
Mm.
Um,
unless
and then
dreams are
holding,
that, but it's like, who can say?
yeah, exactly, exactly. Yeah, but a lot of mine tend to be past. It's
Mm-hmm.
interesting, sort of things that have happened or people I have known that reappear,
Sure.
you know. Um, but not all, not all, have been that way. So
My
yeah, this
dream
is
last
sort of,
night. Sorry,
yeah,
this is really short.
really. What was it? No, no, go
I
for it.
had a dream last night. It was I don't remember the whole thing, but it was really short. But it was just like I had like this really close-up view of my fingers typing on a keyboard,
Yeah,
like a computer keyboard,
yeah.
and like feeling the nerves in my brain firing to control the keyboard. And I was wondering
Wow.
this this is because I've been watching some neuroplasticity lectures.
Yeah.
But I was in the dream I was wondering like is using a computer keyboard affecting the same parts of my brain as piano players? Because apparently piano players have like this extra fold in their brain because of how
Interesting.
much they need to use their hands on the piano,
Yeah, yeah,
and they have it on both sides. Violinists only have it
yeah.
on one side because they're mostly
Right.
using it with one
That's
hand.
wild.
And I was like, do I have it from like programming and stuff
That's
too?
wild. You probably might,
Yeah, maybe.
you know.
Yeah.
I mean, that's that part of the brain's being effective. You know about the London Cabby study.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
You're familiar with it, yeah? Right,
Yeah.
where actually their this the spatial part of their brain is larger,
Yep.
physically larger.
Mm-hmm.
So would would be no surprise, but that's funny. Now, if I think about it too, like um, let's say significant people from the past who I'm not even in touch with
Mm-hmm.
will pop up in dreams. Um, uh, Past relationships, but important relationships, romantic and otherwise, pop up in dreams. And yeah, and elements of desire. I mean, probably fear. Everyone experiences that at some point, right? In terms of the classic nightmare.
Sure.
So there's, those fearing elements. But it's interesting to contemplate whether or not you are accessing something that is not just sort of like the typical explanation of dreams, which is a rehashing of the day or the
Mm-hmm.
week or the month or the years, that there is something of spiritual import
Mm-hmm.
going on. That's intriguing,
Yeah,
you know.
for sure.
All right, where are we? Oh,
Um,
can I just jump to that part that I found that I talked about?
oh yeah, the mm-hmm.
Deep driving desire. Um, that was page 114. So
Mm-hmm.
it's still, sorry.
Still with the
Yep, it's
king.
still in this discussion. Yep.
Yeah.
It says, it's the bottom up. It says, as a person acts, so he becomes in life. Those who do good
Mm,
become good. Those who do harm become bad. Good deeds make one pure. Bad deeds make one impure. You are what, this is just a great line. You should add this on your wall. You
yeah.
are what your deep driving desire is. That just sort of hit me. As your desire is, so is your will. As your will is, so is your deed. As your deed is, so is your destiny. Dang.
Yeah.
And this was the deep, continuing on 115. We live in accordance with our deep driving desire. It is this desire at the time of death that determines what our next life will be. We will come back to earth to work out, and I'm curious about the translation here,
Mm-hmm.
to work out the satisfaction of that desire. And I'm wondering if it's maybe I
The
wonder if it also
completion
could, yeah, I'm wondering because, well, actually, no,
or the resolving
actually,
of a desire, maybe.
yeah, although it
Yeah.
could be satisfaction in the
Mm-hmm.
sense, because I'm sorry, I'm looking at the desire as in the negative. But if you look at it as in the positive, you are it's almost like the fulfillment of the desire or
Yeah.
yeah, fulfillment's a good one, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would
Mm-hmm.
imagine the negative desires you need that's your project that you need to ultimately work out of
Yeah.
the self.
Interesting. I wonder if it's like you do. like satisfy the negative desires even. And now
Yeah.
that you've
Hmm.
satisfied them, your next life can focus on another desire, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like get
Yeah.
rid of all of the ones that are less
Yes, and that's what I think.
fulfilling.
Also, like, yeah, and that's why satisfy can also be like, all right. Look, I just give you a simple example. My desire is, food. Okay,
Hmm.
so I'm hungry at a particular point. That I mean, that's a new. Well, that's an important desire, actually. I was going to say it's neutral, but it's an important desire. So I satisfy it by eating, right?
Hmm.
And the
But how
desire
about
is
ice
gone.
cream, for example? Like if
Yeah.
you don't desire food, but you desire ice cream
But
or like something sweet.
yeah. So I would, I don't know what satisfying is there. I mean, other than like having the ice cream, having the
Yeah.
candy, but I'm sort of feeling like satisfy also in the sense of like it's done.
Hmm.
Are you with me? Like it's completed.
Don't need to worry about it
Um,
anymore. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, he does qualify, but not those who are free from desire. They are free because all their desires have found. Well, there you go, found fulfillment in the self.
Hmm. Hmm.
And do not. So I really think the earlier part is on more on the negative.
I think it's on both. Like,
Okay.
I think all desire, in this sense, it's like meta. Like, all
Hmm.
desires will be fulfilled by in the self, and I think maybe in the body or the physical world.
Yeah.
And then once you've fulfilled all of those desires, and there's no other desires to seek
Yeah.
out, then you are free from desire. And then,
Or if you will,
hmm
you could you also say the desire is satisfied if you see it for what it's worth. Like in other words, maybe at one point I wanted to be famous, and then
hmm
now I'm sort of like, yeah, I see it for what it's worth.
mm-hmm.
It's a passing thing. You can't have it forever.
I would
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah, I would almost say that that's not satisfying the desire. That's more of like
yeah,
destroying it. Like, I don't know, breaking it
yeah,
down. Like, I had this
yeah,
desire, but now I see what it really is, and now I don't really,
yeah.
it's not my, it's now not my desire. Like, I have a new
That's
desire.
true. Actually, if you look at that phrase we just read, but
Hmm.
not those who are free from desire. Okay, so now we're talking about those who are free from desire. They are free because all of their desires have found fulfillment in the self.
Hmm.
So looking at that, then it's almost sort of like a being a slave to sin in the Christian language. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying? You're actually you think you're free because you're indulging in sex, drugs, and rock and roll, as it were, but you are not
Hmm.
because you want the next
Oh,
high, and so
interesting.
you're
Yeah, yeah.
chasing it. You're constantly enslaved to it. Um, but you think you're doing it freely, but you're not really. It's a form of addiction. So they are free because their desires are found fulfilled in themselves. So
Oh, so
that
this,
line makes me,
like, there's
you with
almost
me?
another way to read this. So instead of like
Yeah,
their desires, like past desires have been
yeah.
fulfilled already, this is more like their desires are focused on the self,
Yes.
like
Yeah, yeah,
Brahman,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Atman,
Which
and
makes
so
sense.
they are fulfilled
Yeah,
only within the self and not within like external things.
exactly.
Hmm.
Exactly. Yeah, yeah. And
Yeah.
and then there's freedom there.
Hmm.
Um, it's yeah, like it's really appealing. I mean, there is an element where, I think about these yogis, or I think about, within the Catholic tradition, the monastic movement with all the monks. It's like it is literally like just giving up
Yeah.
everything, you know. And then you wonder, and you look at it from the outside as non-monastic, and you're like, that just seems too austere. You need to have an occasional drink and enjoy the steak and whatever else,
Mm-hmm.
or get married or have sex or something like that, right?
Hmm.
But it does make you think, like, what are they experiencing? Like
Sure.
is there a deep well of joy and peace and contentment that the common person just doesn't have,
Hmm.
because we're hooked into certain desires that frustrate. the self. Well,
Hmm.
not the self, but one self. You know. You
Yeah,
know.
it's a good question. There's like two more famous people who um, studied under different like yogis,
Hmm.
and one of them is Dr. K. He's on YouTube, and then the other
You
one,
referenced him, yeah.
yeah, the other one is Jay Shetty. He has a
Hmm.
health and wellness podcast, and it's like both of them went into that life for a number of years, right, where they kind of gave up everything and
Yeah.
they just studied under um, like different yogis and
Masters, yeah.
masters, yeah, and um, but then I think like after a period of time, um, they they could stay there, right? And
Yeah.
like become a master, for example. But like I think, their masters encouraged them to go back into the world, right? It's like you've
Yeah. Yeah.
experienced this, now go back and then
Yeah.
make a choice, essentially,
Yep.
of what you want.
Yep.
Um,
Yeah.
and both of them ended up like picking like something in the world like finding a wife or having
Sure.
kids or things like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's like, but they have all of this wisdom from their
Yeah.
masters, but now they're living their life differently.
Yeah.
But they didn't decide to go back and just live that
Well,
other life.
exactly. And I
Hmm.
think that no, you're right. And I think that is those paths are within the well, what do they call it? I think, well, yeah, within the Catholic tradition, they call it the religious and the non-religious. So the
Hmm.
religious would be the priest and the monk and the nun, and then the non-religious would be all the parishioners, right?
Hmm.
Just the average person that is Catholic, and both paths are viable, right? It's not to say that, right, if everyone becomes a monk or a nun or a priest, then there will be no more new Catholics, as it were,
Hmm.
right? So obviously, both paths are viable, which I think you're speaking also to or something that reminds me about the Houston Smith intro on Hinduism is about these multiple paths
Hmm.
depend on who you are and
Yeah.
your temperament, your personality. That ought to be right. Um, that needs to be taken into consideration. That there are differences of interests and differences of gifts or skills, right?
Yeah.
And that, however, we still need to find we still need to become self-aware,
Hmm.
and there could be different paths for that. So yeah, you could do it as like hyper religious, or you can do it as sort of like a common person.
Yeah.
You know,
Hmm.
but it does make me wonder about like going back to like what if this is just like a really interesting recipe for joy, for
Hmm.
bliss. You know, I mean, at some level, I know it's deeper than that because we need to work out we needed to work out our salvation, as it were. but but right, sort of like here's this recipe. It's right in front of you. Here are the morals. Oh, and by the way, it's probably going to be a little bit hard, you know,
Yeah.
at first. But habituation is beautiful because after a while it becomes a habit, and therefore a good habit.
Hmm.
Um, but what does that feel like? You know,
Yeah.
and you could do the reverse too. Like, what does it feel like to be a sadist? Right? What does
Hmm.
it feel like to be a serial murderer? Like, what is that headspace like?
Hmm.
You know,
Hmm.
I mean, I don't want to go there, but I'm just
Right.
saying, like, that's yeah, I would say you and I are like further along the path toward self awareness than
Sure.
those mindsets. So yeah.
Yeah.
All right, let's jump into the sacred song,
The
Chandogya.
sacred Chandogya.
I got a little intro in there.
Go for it.
So we've got well we have the sacred song as a translation. Also, it can mean one who sings in verse, which is interesting.
Hmm.
So it's preoccupied. This whole Upanishad is preoccupied with sacred sounds, and the first chapter is focused on the chant uh, Om.
Hmm.
So which is um, identified with breath once again, going back to like the importance of prana.
Hmm.
Um, and so that's sort of my intro on that. But did you want to talk about? I have a little bit of an intro on four,
On
but not,
4?
yeah,
Oh,
but it's
sure.
chapter four,
Yeah, yeah, right, because there's
but not
a
one,
couple.
not so much, not too much on one and three. Not for any of
Yeah.
them. I mean, they are short, these excerpts, but
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think we've already talked about how Om is like the sound of being,
yeah,
of the
yeah.
imperishable.
Hmm.
But in this one, it's talking about the Rig Veda. Is that something that you've discussed
We're
before?
actually going to read it.
Okay, yeah, yeah.
Remember, we're reading out of order.
Mm-hmm.
So Rig Veda, we actually should have read first. So I thought that was interesting. That was an interesting
Is that
reference.
a text or is that one?
Text,
Is that like, okay, that's
text.
the whole
So
text, the
there's
Rig
the
Veda.
Vedas. There are the
Okay.
Vedas,
Mm-hmm.
and there are a series of sects within the texts within the Vedas.
Okay.
The Rig Veda is one of them.
Gotcha.
One of the popular ones.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
Um,
Mm-hmm. It's interesting. Again, I have a book that was that was used by someone else,
oh
and
yeah.
there's an underline
Oh,
here,
interesting.
and
I
it
see it with.
says, yeah, on 126 verse 8, it's with the word Om we say I agree and fulfill desires. I don't know. I
Wow.
just found it interesting that Om is like the ending of a lot of these
Yeah.
poems and
Oh,
scriptures,
true.
and it
True.
it just
Yes.
reminds
Yes.
me of like the Christian Amen, right? Like
Yes.
it's got very
Totally.
similar sounds to it,
Yeah. No,
and
that's
it's also
interesting.
like an I agree.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah. No, that's right. You're right. That's right.
Yeah.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Hmm.
It's interesting. I will say that um, some of the times that I've meditated, or even not meditated, like I'll just get into the car and I'll be like, okay, there's habits are going to like fly in right now. I'm going to, either turn on the news, turn on the classical station, listen to something, listen to a podcast in the car, something like that. And there have been a few times where I've just stopped. Um, and I've literally said Om, like if I'm going to the grocery store, and I've
Hmm.
repeated Om on the way to the grocery store, and then sort of like subtly, not too obnoxiously, like in the parking lot as I'm walking to the grocery store, and then real softly as I'm in the grocery store. And it's interesting how uh, Om, in particular, really slices through uh, the monkey mind.
Yeah, it's like giving a big sigh of relief,
Yeah,
but with
yeah,
with the vocalization, and it's like just giving a sigh or letting it all out, like relaxes
yeah.
so much of your nervous
Totally.
system.
Yeah,
It's
actually, even
crazy.
body. I didn't even think
Hmm.
about that. I was thinking
Yeah,
more mind, but totally with
totally
body as
connected, but yeah.
well.
Hmm.
Yeah, and just uh, and I think one big thing for me as I'm reading, working on this with you is and then reflect on it is how busy my mind is, and
Hmm.
and there's part of me that doesn't like its randomness.
Hmm.
Okay, I know that's weird, because sometimes that's helpful, right? I'll think of something that was important, right?
Sure.
And I wasn't anticipating that would come. Um, but other than that, just there is a certain beauty to the repetition of it, and then also, and I think I shared this with you when I did the meditation in the car waiting for the kid at the
Hmm.
soccer practice, is just and then after it's been repeated a number of times, the quiet, like I'm sorry, when I've stopped,
Yeah.
just the quiet in my mind,
Hmm.
and I feel like I feel like I'm listening more and seeing more, as it were, because I'm not preoccupied with um, all of the mental chatter,
Hmm.
you know. So it's interesting. I mean, you could say, I mean, maybe you could make up your own home. So you know what I'm saying? Just choose your letters,
Right, right.
but Um, so but um, I found that to be uh, anecdotal, for myself. You
I
know,
think I think there's something about the Om, like those
yeah,
those sounds that
Yeah.
it's like oh is like a very open sound. You don't need to be doing too much with
Yeah.
your tongue, and then you're just
Yep.
closing your mouth and it's going out
Yep.
of your nasal cavity. So it's just like
Yeah.
it is relaxing in your mouth too. Because if you did something like an
Yeah.
E, like your
Yeah.
tongue has to like press
Yeah.
up.
Yeah.
So
Or
yeah, I don't know.
you don't even want to throw. You don't even want to throw in a K or a Q. You
Oh,
know what I'm saying?
eek.
No,
Yeah.
you're right. It starts out really soft. You're
Mm-hmm.
right. It starts out really soft with the O sound and ends soft as well.
Mm-hmm.
You're right. It's that syllable is conducive for like relaxing.
Yeah.
Like the mouth is just literally the mouth, the palate, everything, is relaxed. You
Yep.
know.
Mm-hmm.
So I encourage Om,
Yeah.
as does this Upanishad.
It does.
Um, All right, we've got three. Oh, that was the other reference. I meant to make that as a reference. 126. This is back to the deep desire. A
Mm-hmm.
person is what his deep desire is. It is our
Mm-hmm.
deepest desire in this life that shapes the life to come. So let us direct our deepest desires to realize the self. So
Mm-hmm.
there's something just hit me about the deepest desire as being defining. I mean, I know that there have been other expressions of it, like you are what you do, right?
Sure.
You are the sum total of your actions. Although that doesn't really speak to desire, that speaks more to action.
Right.
So I feel like desire goes a level
It's
lower
or
and
higher, depending on how you think
or
about
higher.
it. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry, yeah, true. Where it's like that's the driving force,
Mm-hmm.
and um, so it's interesting to like how can we cultivate as we're in this exercise of studying Hindu, how can we cultivate the desire for the self, the great
Mm-hmm.
self,
Mm-hmm.
you know? How can we cultivate that? And and then also doing an inventory on what our deep desires are. I don't know, what were yours? I know we talked about mine, but a little bit.
Yeah, what are my deep desires?
If you had to think about like, you know, I mean,
Uh,
maybe that's the meditation for the next 2 weeks. Like, you'll have like, here's the answer. I mean, I would
yeah,
say
I don't know.
knowledge is a big one for you.
It is.
Love,
Mm-hmm.
love, it's got to be a big one for you.
Well,
I'm
yeah,
saying in terms of like,
I'm just wondering how deep
you
all
know,
of those are. I don't know. What's the deepest?
probably probably deeper than your desire for popcorn.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
Okay.
Because I feel like if, I don't know, like I think about the core of myself,
Yeah.
um, I feel like curiosity or understanding are like the deepest.
Yeah.
Like it's
Yeah.
something that I've had since I was a little kid. I would like pick up a piece of
Totally.
dirt and just
That's
stare
what we're
at it, or
looking
like
at.
little bugs,
That's
and
what,
it's
yeah.
like I want to understand it. I just want to like observe it, right? Like,
Yeah.
and it, I don't know that's in the physical and the
It's a big
non-physical.
one.
Hmm.
Yeah. 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 I think, yeah, I think you're right on that.
And I don't know if that's a
I
desire.
think
It's more of just
connect
like
who you
it's like a
are,
who I
like a
am, kind
constitution.
of. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. 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 But at the same point, that's there.
hmm
I mean, how do we know our desires? We know our desires by
sure.
what we ultimately do. Is that
That
fair?
takes you kind of to the actions. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but right. But if I look at the actions, why am I doing that action?
hmm
That's because I have this desire for X,
Right.
right?
hmm
So I would still say, it's put it this way: it's not like you have a choice not to do that. So you're
Sure.
not programmed to be curious.
hmm
I'm sorry, it could be part of your makeup, but you also could choose not to. You could just be like, hey, I'm going to do a week where I'm not curious and see how it
hmm
goes.
Right.
You have that freedom to not. So the fact that you continue to pursue that does say that you have a desire for
Sure.
it.
hmm
I would say for you too, like I think you have the need for connection. I mean, that might just be basic, like
hmm
a basic human one, but I think that matters. Um, like the way your friend group and the way you're setting the way you have the house. You could just
hmm
have the house by yourself,
Right.
and I doubt you just have them there to help out with the mortgage.
Right.
That's a part, but
Yeah.
that sense of community, and it's rich. I've seen it,
Oh yeah.
and I don't, and I think you're the happier for it. So I think I don't know, as an outsider. I would probably attach that. But you're right. The curiosity, the knowledge, the inquiry is
Hmm.
clearly there. So,
Yep.
and that's a good desire to have because that puts you right in line with all of these seekers looking for the teacher,
Sure. Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
Right. All right.
We are coming
Right.
up
Let's see where
on, or are a little past um,
little past.
time, just for your sake.
Yeah. What time is it?
Uh, oh 08. I don't.
Oh,
For you,
oh, eight.
it's 12:08
Oh,
here.
oh,
Yeah, yeah.
got it. Got it. Let's just wrap it up.
Okay.
I mean, we could say some more things, but I don't want to spend another week on this Upanishad. How about I throw it to you? What were some highlights in the rest of this Upanishad?
Yeah, so I mean, we talked about a little bit about
Yeah. Oh, this
them
was
going
yeah.
back to the teacher.
Hmm.
Um, I think. Why don't we
Yeah.
talk real quick
Oh,
about that last part that you were talking about? Sorry, the
I'm
last
sorry.
question that
Oh, yeah. That's fine. That's fine. So yeah, this is the story. Let's see.
right, Indra and so Prajapati, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, is the teacher in this case, right?
Yes. Let me see. Oh, yeah.
The
And
gods and the
is it
godless. Yeah, yeah.
Virachana?
Uh,
So
yeah, that sounds right. Where is that?
Virachana. We're like 140,
Yeah, yeah.
144. So we have the gods and the godless, and the when I was doing my research, the godless was also defined as a demon. So
Okay.
Virachana, which makes sense. So I'm guessing that Indra is sort of holy, or at least a god. And
Hmm.
Virachana is I don't know, like I don't know, I don't know, like an angel and a demon almost, to use Christian terminology.
Hmm.
Um,
Right.
and I thought,
So,
yeah, so yeah, go for it.
I mean, the story kind of goes they're
You're wondering
seeking
what the
the
self
self.
is, right?
Yeah, they're seeking
Yeah,
what the self is, and then Prajapati tells them to look at their reflection, to see
right.
themselves. Looks at that tells them to adorn themselves, and look at this reflection again in a bowl of water, and then they go on out and one what
Well, they
Virachana, that's
come
what it is.
Virachana,
Yeah.
Virachana, right?
Yeah.
He identifies Atman with the body,
Yes. Yep.
or the self with the
The
body.
self with the
With,
body and continues to adorn the self. But Indra is not
he goes
satisfied.
back and he teaches them,
Yeah.
whoever lives for indulging the senses will find joy in this world and the next, right?
Yeah, yeah. But Indra was
Betraying
not
everything we've read,
true.
right?
Indra was not satisfied with this
Correct.
answer. We already kind of explained why. If the self can, or
Sure.
if the body can die, then the self can die. So he returns to Prajapati and explains this
A
issue
number
that
of
he
times.
has.
Yeah.
And he goes back and he does this number of times where he's like,
Yeah.
Prajapati's like, you are thinking clearly, Indra.
Yes.
Um, and then he's like, live with me for 32 years and I will teach you more of the self. I'm wondering
Right.
what teaching is happening here if these questions keep coming back to him in 32 years, but that's beside the point. This is a story. And so, what was the next question? Oh, yeah.
So,
It's about
yeah, so,
dreams.
right, right.
So it's
Actually, so
like if the
right, the
body is
first one
not
is basically
Mhm.
if the body dies or if it's paralyzed, the self dies, right?
Right, but
If the
dreams can
body is
exist
well,
even if you're paralyzed, and right, I guess
right.
in the dreaming
Well, the dream,
state.
hold on, the dream one, he says, yet in the dreams, the self may appear to suffer and to be slain.
Oh,
It
right.
may
Hmm.
become conscious of pain and even weep. In such knowledge, I have no value,
Right,
because the assumption is that the self doesn't suffer, can't be slain,
right.
is pure joy. Um, and then he responds, is this after another 32 years? Now he responds, in the dreaming, oh yeah, I'm sorry, yeah, it is another 32 years.
Yep. And then it's dreamless this time. So it went from the dreaming state to one where there's no
Yep.
dreams, and that's the connection that we made
When
earlier.
a person is sleeping soundly, free from dreams, you're absolutely right. With a still
Hmm.
mind, that is the self, fearless and deathless. And then he's satisfied, but then he thinks about it in the state of dreamless sleep. One is not aware of oneself or any other.
Mm-hmm.
That state of dreamless sleep is very close to extinction, which, by the way, is apt,
Yeah.
right? And then, right, so it's like I'm not even there.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing there. So he returns. He says, "This is of no value. Oh, by the way, this is only a 5-year run now.
Yeah.
So
Well,
the
we're he's
first
like
round was
he's almost 100
32."
now, so
Right, right, exactly. So 5 years, and then he said, "So I wait, then he says it is true that I think this is I don't know if this was the one where I was yeah it had to be because it's almost over.
yeah.
It is true the body is perishable,
But within
but
it
within
dwells the
it dwells the
imperishable self.
imperishable self. The body is subject to pleasure and pain. No one who identifies with the body can escape from pleasure and pain, but those who know they are not the body pass beyond pleasure and pain." I felt like if that was not answering it.
That was not answering.
Well, because he's talking about extinction. Like in other words, if it's dreamless sleep that the self that where the self resides, then when I reflect on it, it seems like it's nothing because it's dreamless.
Right, but I think what the connection he's drawing is that he's admitting that the body is perishable and that even a
Oh,
state of dreamless sleep, which is
hmm,
like extinction, like being perishable,
yeah.
he's making that connection and saying
Ah,
that
ah,
that's not the self. The self is within, right?
I
The
see.
self
I
is
see what
within
you're
that
saying.
and is imperishable. So it's like you're focusing on the wrong
Right.
aspect, thinking that being in the state of dreamless sleep is the self, right?
Yeah.
It's like beyond, it's another neti neti, like not this,
Yeah.
um, kind of situation. And so it's like, I don't know, I see this as like total separation from all of the bodily
Yeah.
functions, even sleeping dreamlessly.
Yeah. So I don't know why bring up the status of the body, perishable or imperishable, to answer the extinction question, the fact that I'm unaware during dreamless sleep.
Well,
It's that
I mean, extinction is like perishing, right?
okay, okay, yeah, true.
So,
I'm going to just real quick and go back to it.
yeah,
In
yeah,
the
yeah.
state of dreamless sleep, one is not aware of oneself or any other. The state of dreamless sleep is very close to extinction.
Yeah, because I think
Um,
before the problem was with the uh, the body
yeah,
paralyzed, physical pain, the body can die. So then if the self is
yeah,
like that, then the self can die. Like that, if the body can
yeah,
die, then the
yeah,
self can die. So it's like, oh, let's go a level higher. It's like the dream, like dreaming,
yeah,
where you can
yeah.
feel, I don't know, your body's not dying, but you can dream. But then it's like, oh, well, that doesn't work because you can suffer in your dreams. But then, okay,
Hmm.
sleeping without dreams, you don't have that suffering. But then it's like, wait a minute, it's like you don't exist at all. So
Yeah,
it's almost bringing us back to the body
yeah.
dying,
In other
right?
words, I guess it would be another level. Um, so wait. I want to just go to the question before. In the dreaming state, it is true the self is not blind. The body is blind nor lame. We got that in the dreaming state. Yet in the state, the self may suffer, even weep. Right. That's the first.
Hmm.
The previous one, free from dreams. Um, Right. So in other words, self can still seemingly suffer in the dreaming state. Great. We get rid of the dreaming state. That's when I see the self. Wait a minute. How can I see the self? So I guess it's just another level of like awareness or consciousness.
Hmm.
In terms of really being able to, and I guess what he's saying.
Well, I mean, think
Yeah,
about it,
he's
right?
also
Like,
making. You're right. You're right. He's closing it by making a distinction between body and the self.
hmm
Right. and
if
and
he,
and, and the whole discussion started with an identification between self and body, which is
yes,
flawed.
yeah,
So because that's the starting point, he's like like yeah, exactly. We need to continue to sort of distinguish between these two,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And ultimately, I guess what I'm going back to that one question about, well, I guess here's the point. I'm not aware of the self in dreamless sleep because I'm not aware of anything,
Yeah.
period. But
Mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean there is no self,
Right. Mm-hmm.
right?
The
It
self is
just means that
beyond. Yeah.
I can't in that state access it. Not to say that I can't access it in other ways that we've talked about.
Sure. Yeah. Well,
Or do you
maybe.
think in
I don't know.
dreamless sleep there is a higher level of consciousness where, I mean, that
Well, I
doesn't,
think the
yeah.
self exists in dreamless sleep, but I don't know if you're aware of
True.
it. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
my point.
Yeah.
That's
That's
my
fair.
point.
Okay.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And um yeah, and then obviously just continuing to make this distinction between body and self.
Mm-hmm.
All right, ready? You
Yeah.
see it at the end? 152?
152.
Oh,
Om
Shanti,
Shanti
Shanti,
Shanti
Shanti.
Shanti.
All right.
All right.